Jive Hive Jeff from Two Hacks Garage. Well, I think it's time to do something on these cylinder heads that I had planned to do for a while. I do want to give my, sort of my final review on the Speedmaster heads that I bought for the 521 cubic inch engine that we're going to put in that 68 Thunderbird for the No Name Nationals. As you can see, I have done a lot of cylinder head work on these. I have done a lot of reviews on them, and you're probably getting sick and tired of watching cylinder head video after one another, but I just wanted to walk everyone through what I've been doing to these and why. Right off the bat, I did do an initial review video, and I ended up doing another one kind of after talking with my machinist and getting into these a little bit and just shared some more thoughts. Up front, I do want to say I'm not an expert. I'm not a professional at this. I'm the DIY garage type guy that likes to do things on my own, on a budget, save some money. I watch your guys' videos for tips, tricks, and advice. I watch the comments. I read them, try to respond to as many as I can. All the advice, whether it be from the comments, emails, texts, phone calls, you name it, it is greatly appreciated. Everybody out there, I really do appreciate it. So with that, the one thing I do want to say about these heads, when I bought them complete, I think they were around $1,300, $1,400 complete. I could have saved a lot more money and bought them bare for about $900. At the time, I kind of went into it just a little bit blind, benefit of the doubt, bought them complete. However, I did read a lot of stuff online saying that's no bueno. I should have listened to that. The first thing I'm going to say about these heads, absolutely, if you go with this brand, in my opinion, buy them bare. I'm going to show you why here in a minute, but I just need to say that. That is my disclaimer on these. I'm happy with the castings. It's kind of a knockoff Edelbrock between some of their head designs based off the 429 460. I just want to repeat right off the bat, buy them bare. So with that, let's dive into why you should buy these heads bare. Be right back. All right, I'm back. So this here is obviously the cylinder head. I wanted to go with those nice chrome valve covers for looks and kind of the old school mentality, the way the old ones had that nice kind of wedge shape to them. I had to go with these just because of the valve train that I'm putting on here with the roller rocker setup. So I'm going to go ahead and take this off. And mind you, which is really odd about these, you have 1, 2, 3 bolt holes for the valve covers on the back, and you have 4 on front. But a lot of these big block Ford aftermarket valve covers that you do find actually skip the center one in the back. So keep that in mind when also buying the valve covers. You just got to make sure you get a good gasket line down there, and they should seal pretty well. These are Mr. Gasket brand. They're nice and thick. I have no problem with that. So as you can see right off the bat, some of the changes immediately made. Obviously ports, we're going to get into that. But as far as the valve train goes, these did not come with any rocker arms or guide plates. They were complete with valves, valve springs, retainers, and everything. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to touch that piece first. And the only reason I'm doing that is that's the way the cylinder head's laid out. I'm not going to go in the order of how I had to do all the work. We're just going to start here. So one of the first things about these cylinder heads right off the bat that I noticed, that the stock valve springs that these come with, I'm just going to put better lack of terms, garbage. Really springy, real lightweight, kind of cheap. There was like no spring pressure any ratings on these. They just looked to be something that they had and threw in there. The retainers themselves and keepers are all bagged up nicely here. I don't know why I'm going to keep them, but it was the same way. After kind of miking some of these and looking at them, they weren't really exactly true to one another. So one of the first decisions was made was, well, I have a Howard's camshaft. It's a hydraulic flat tappet. I'm going to call Howard's and ask them, based upon my application, what spring to go with. So with that, I ended up getting these Howard springs here. Now these are very high quality. They give you the spring rate. They even tell you what height to set them at when installing them. So that's the route I went. And in previous videos, you saw how we when we started taking these apart, how it had a million of these shims that were in there. These aren't bad for some purposes, which I'll touch on in a minute, but the problem is if you look in here, you see the machining right here, okay? Well, I added these cups. These are Clay Smith valve spring cups, and in a previous video, I did show how I measured for these cups in detail and all of that. Well, all they had was these sitting in here. So that was going to present a case where you have a bunch of different shims in there, and these valves were on there in that cup, the machined cup here. Well, the problem with that was it presented a case where they could walk all over the place, and that's not a good situation with a higher RPM, higher horsepower application. So right off the bat, just visually seeing their springs and how their springs here and how they had the actual shims in there, along with their retainers and their keepers, it was just a recipe for disaster, in my opinion, and after talking with a lot of people. So right off the bat, it was new valve springs made by a reputable company with all the specs on them, measured for valve spring height based upon the specs they gave me, got the correct cups, and from there we installed them. We did have a video on that. However, here, if you look at this, these shims are just typical valve spring shim. We actually did use these, and the reason we use these is when we measured our valve spring height, we did need to make up some difference on the bottom side. So we were able to use these to get our proper valve spring height. So these weren't completely useless, but in the application that they had them for, yes, useless. Now, with that, we're going to go ahead and get on to the valves. If you look over here, I have 16 brand new intake valves. If you watch our previous videos, you saw us go through 16 valves that were new, initially 8 that were bent. They were way out of spec, absolutely useless. Out of the first 8, I think we found 1 or 2 that might have been okay, called Speedmaster. We're going to get you the right valve spring or the right valves. They sent us another 8. Immediately threw them on the lathe. No bueno, they were junk. The other part about it is not only being bent on the actual shaft itself, also on the face wobbled. I want you to look at something. Look at the dish. Look at that dish. 2 different dishes, okay? Now, these were in the cylinder heads when I got them. 2 different valves, same diameter, same length, but a different dish pattern on there. I was not too thrilled about that, so no, we didn't go with these valves. So if anybody has a use for, in my opinion, useless valve springs, oh, and by the way, here's a good one for you. When we took it out, that thing was all just crumpled in there, so poor craftsmanship and assembly. Chinesium built. But if anybody has a use for any of this stuff, I will ship it to you for free. I want it out of my garage, out of my memory. So now with these valves itself, okay, what we're going to go into now is show you something that we did highlight in another video. I know I keep on talking about other videos, but if you go back and watch the videos on these cylinder heads, you'll know what I'm talking about. Now what I am going to do at the end of this video is I'm going to show pictures from various steps of the process so you can see what we're talking about here. So with the valves itself, I'm going to go ahead and flip this over so you can see. These are the Ferrara valves that we replaced the junk intake valves with. They're flat, they're true. We put these on there, absolutely straight, absolutely true, perfect for this application. Now, mind you, the exhaust valves on these heads, believe it or not, from Speedmaster, they were actually straight. They were true. There wasn't a problem with them. I was happy about that. I'm not really 100% sure why every single intake valve they sent is junk. Who knows? I have my thoughts on it, and I'm going to go back to the whole Chinesium thing. I like the American-made product. Unfortunately, these are not American-made. While the casting is good, everything else burned me. That's on me, and I think from now on I'm going to stick to being American-made with a lot of other products. So with that, the valves. In a previous video, you saw us do a valve job. The reason being, brand new valves installed on a brand new head from the manufacturer. We checked them, and not a single one of them was seating correctly. So brand new heads needed a valve job right out of the box. I did read this stuff online. I should have listened and just bought them bare. Another disclaimer, like I said, I'm not an expert, but I'm smart enough to realize when a million people are saying something, maybe you should listen to that, do your research, and go about it that way. So, valve job on everything. We did do typical 3-angle valve job, 60, 45, 15, that type of mindset, and we got everything to seat correctly. So that's the valves on this. We had multiple delays just for the fact of having to wait for valves. So yeah, time is money and money is time. So we got that rectified. All of that rectified, taken care of. We were happy. Valve springs, same thing. And one other thing, let me touch on something I did mention in a video. So you probably did see us measuring every single valve spring on this. And the reason we did that was, as we were going through these heads, we noticed, you know, hey, this is wrong, we're just going to check literally everything at that point, right? So let me get in here a little bit better here so you can see. We were talking about where the cups need to lay in these machine recesses here. Not a single one on both heads were actually the same measurement of the machining down to there. So if we would have measured this one and said that's going to be true throughout the rest, our valve spring height would have been absolutely incorrect. So we had to take the extra time and measure every single one and shim it up properly. On to the next part. And this is where I spent a lot of time. This is where I'm going to say, yes, I'm not an expert, but I did the best I can. And I appreciate everyone's feedback on this. Port matching. We're going to start on the intake side first. So with our intake ports, you saw a video with Kyle and I and everything else that we did to get these ports correct. Let's see if I can get in there. So what we did is we gasket matched these, laid down the Daikin blue, we scribed the gaskets. Everything was way off. Literally everything was way off. Down in these ports, it had humps in there that were really restrictive. Did some research, made some phone calls, texted people, all that type of stuff, and they said, hey, these are a good flowing head on the intake side, but you can actually improve them. So we actually went down in here quite a bit, and like you saw in previous videos, opened it up a lot. We port matched it, and we got rid of all the obstruction that was in there, some of the casting flaws inside, and we went through it, cleaned it up, not to a complete mirror polish. It's 120 grit, so it's still rough for the fuel atomization. That actually wasn't bad. That's something you should probably do with all heads. Just check it to make sure it matches. But in these cases, they were actually way off straight out of the box. The intake that I have is a tunnel ram, and it was the same deal. We gasket matched that, went through it, and cleaned it up. So with that, my intake and my head, that all matches actually pretty well. Very happy with that. I'm pretty sure it's going to flow very, 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 very nicely on the intake side. A lot of time, a lot of hours spent on that. But you know what? I learned a lot. Everyone's comments, feedbacks, tips, tricks, and all that really helped me out. So I really do appreciate that. Now let's get on to the exhaust side. And this is where I have to give a big shout out to Bear Rose Garage. He did an excellent, excellent video on talking about factory Ford heads. That is one of the reasons why when I decided to go through these, I spent so much time detailing this. I know he's interested in getting some of these heads, so I made sure to kind of document everything I could, help a fellow YouTube no-name National 500 guy out, and really detail this. That being said, one of the things that he had talked about in his video was the exhaust floor on the big block Ford heads. Now, it was a really terrible design. They did have poor flow. Like he said, it was almost like a 90-degree exit angle, which is not ideal. They had everything in front of them to make this like a max wedge style head, and they didn't do it. So they kind of dropped the ball on that, but you know what? That's fine. That's hindsight 2020. That exhaust floor, what he's referring to, is actually in here, right down in here. So from Speedmaster themselves, one thing they did do, and they corrected properly, it has the raised exhaust floor. However, that being said, it was still pretty restrictive. And, there goes one of those junk valves. Now, what I'm trying to explain on that is, this was actually raised up quite a bit higher in here. See if I can't come in just a little bit more. So it was raised up pretty high in here. This was a little bit rough castings. And if you see here on this mark, you can see where I gasket matched it. I wasn't going to take it all the way down. That's not needed for my application. However, this head actually was about right through here. So the port was much smaller on these heads. It did have a hump in here that needed to come out, and these needed to be really rolled in. This was also flat. So after doing a lot of research, a lot of tips, a lot of advice with some people, we went in and did the old gasket match, made sure they matched on the sides, which they didn't. So we opened it up, rolled it out, and started slowly removing material in here just to get that proper flow. We did that through here. We got rid of the hump that I was referring to, and came back in here and cleaned up a lot of stuff. Same thing on this side, but it wasn't as bad. Now, mind you, I'm not an expert. I kind of wish I was. I kind of wish I had one of these cylinder heads in front of me cut into pieces to see how much I can actually take out. I took out quite a bit for what my capability is, and I'm pretty happy with it. I think these are going to flow nicely for my application. Probably not the best, but you know what? I'm pretty happy the way they turned out. So with that, that wasn't too terrible to do. Like I said, I would recommend doing this and the intake side with any set of heads that you buy. At least check them out. So on this side of it and on the intake side, Speedmaster didn't do that bad of a job. It was just, you know, some of the quality control on the, you know, port matching, some of the casting flaws. And although they did fix the raised floor issue that was lacking with Ford, there were still improvements that needed to be made. Now, I don't have the valves out of this, but if you watch previous videos, I will put the pictures of this in here. On the combustion chamber side, inside here, especially around the actual bowls, there was a lot of material in there that was obstructive. So we went in there, cleaned all of that out that where we could find. After we cleaned it out, got it to a point where the casting flaws and all that extra material was gone, we did the same thing. We went in and 120'd the intake side, but on the exhaust side, as you saw with the port itself, it was, you know, pretty shiny, pretty smooth. That was 320. Now, you saw in all my other videos, we talked about fuel atomization, fuel atomization, fuel atomization. So that's the reason why we left it a little rougher on the intake side, just atomized the fuel correctly. Did the same thing with the intake manifold, but on the exhaust side, to get those gases out, we made it as smooth as possible. So that is where I am currently at with the cylinder heads. Now, I don't have a flow bench. I don't have access to a flow bench. I'm just going to have to go by the seat of my pants on this. I know there was a lot of feedback on deshrouding these chambers here. I still might do that. Right now, I just don't have the time or capability to do that. However, it's possibly going to be getting done. I'm just not sure. But for right now, other than cleaning up some stuff that we did already in here, the combustion chambers are going to stay the same. And speaking of that, let's talk about combustion chambers. In a previous video, I did something called How to CC Your Cylinder Heads on a Budget. And I went in there and talked about how these chambers are advertised at 95 cc's. I showed you in the video that it was 90, 91 cc. So it's off. 4 cc's, a little bit of compression difference, negligible. But where it comes to be important is how did they actually match up to one another. Was this 95, 90, 92, 88? Actually, I was pretty happy. When I CC'd the heads, they were all within 1 cc. Don't have to worry about it. So on that part of it, other than kind of a rough combustion chamber that does need some improvement, they actually did a pretty good job on making sure they're all the same. So yeah, that part of it, I'm very happy. So that right there, in a nutshell, is what we did with these cylinder heads. Not too shabby. There was lots of lemons into lemonade moments. There was a lot of learning curves for me. I appreciate all the feedback, advice, everything, everyone that was watching them. And on top of it, you know what? I'm kind of glad it went this way. My mistakes, my maybe overconfidence with some stuff when purchasing this, hopefully could be your gain. So with that, I'm going to do a quick wrap-up video on this. Like I said, at the end of this video, there will be a lot of pictures that are going to go through the steps of this. I know this is going to be a little bit longer of a video than I wanted, but you know what, guys? Let's get this video wrapped up. See you in a few. Well, I know that was a little bit longer video than I normally make, and it's probably going to screw up all the algorithm stuff, but honestly, I really don't care. I want to give you guys my personal assessment of this. So if you ever do go and buy what's considered the budget head, really, 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 really do your homework. I got stung with a couple things. I had to spend more money than I initially wanted to by not buying them bare, just to go back and buy some parts over again. I do have a lot of hours in these, cleaning everything up, getting them to flow a little bit better. Had a lot of delays with them. And mind you, I am on a time crunch. No Name Nationals, I think as of this video today, it was like 152 days. And once again, I'm waiting on parts, but that's another issue. So my honest assessment on these heads, would I buy them again? Yes and no. When I say no is like I really want to support the American-made products, which is getting harder and harder to find. But that's just me. I think I'm going to really do my homework on everything to try to find those American-made products. They are higher quality, generally speaking. However, if you are going to do something on a budget, like in my case with this, and you can't spend a whole lot of money on some of the high-end heads and all of that, there's a very, very economical solution. So this is where I say yes and no. Yes, I would buy these heads again. Yes, I would buy them bare. No, I would not use their valve springs. I would not use their keepers or retainers, nor their valves, especially the intake side, although the exhaust ones were fine. So it's a yes and no answer to me. I have no problem with their castings, their quality, needs a little work, a little bit of time. I would have saved the money initially, bought them bare, saved a whole lot of time without waiting on parts, got everything I wanted in advance, knowing going into this, it's going to needily be checked for gasket match, port match, whatever you want to call it, possibly cleaned up on that, knowing they're going to need a valve job and knowing they're going to need valves, springs, retainers, and all that. Yeah, so you know what, guys? That's how I'm going to end the video. My personal assessment is a yes and no answer. Buy these heads. Make sure they have American-made quality products inside of them. With that, hope everyone enjoys their weekend. I'll see you tomorrow.